Guys, what's up? It's Friday, April 16th, and it's officially week 10 on Ohio Trans Kings. This week's topic is slang and slurs that offend us. Does the word tranny offend you? And do you know the differences between transgender, transsexual, and transvestite? So it's a pretty interesting topic, and I'm just going to jump right in. So, traditionally, transvestitism is something that is actually referred to in the Bible, for anyone who doesn't know that. It's basically characterized as a condition in which an individual is going to identify with a physical sex that is different from their biological one. And it can be made a medical diagnosis if there is discomfort as a result, as a desire to be the opposite sex. Also, if they experience like an impairment with functioning or distress as a result of their gender identity. And like I said, it's actually in the Bible, and it concurrently with the sexual revolution and the development of sexual reassignment surgery, SRS, it's actually become more well known in Western culture, and that's just been in the mid to late 20th century. This is all quoted from Wikipedia, by the way. Let's see. Now, transgender, as defined by Wikipedia, is the state of one's gender identity, identifying as a man, a woman, or neither, or both. And it means that it doesn't match your assigned sex at birth. So basically, it's the same thing as transsexual. It doesn't imply any, specifics of the sexual orientation at all. It says, let's see here. Some may consider conventional sexual orientation labels inadequate or inapplicable. The precise definition for transgender remains in flux, but includes of relating to or designating a person whose identity does not conform unambiguously to conventional notions of male or female gender roles, but combines or moves between these. So basically, you've got people who identify as a third gender, people who are genderqueer, people who identify as, just a queer individual, but, are moving between genders, don't have a problem being called he or she, I always like to think of it as gender is fluid, just like sexuality. So you can have 30,000 combinations between homosexual and heterosexual. And the way I like to say it is that the scales do not go from gay to straight. I believe the scale goes from gay to not gay. If you ever want to know about that, I'll probably end up doing a video on my personal channel about it. So, a little bit about me. I actually have identified as, at one point in my life, I identified as female because I didn't think there was anything else to identify as. So, at one point I did identify as female. I did, at one point, identify as either. Another time I identified as specifically genderqueer. Leaning more toward androgynous or male. And at another point in my life, which is now, I identify as male. So I've pretty much identified as every, not conventional, but I've identified as pretty much every basic gender that you can say. The word tranny actually does not refer to trans men in all actuality. I mean, it really historically hasn't. It's historically actually referred to transvestites, and it's referred to men in dresses, basically. That's what it boiled down to. It actually is short for transvestite, and it was slung more at, men who, physical males who may or may not have identified as female, but at one time or another wore female clothing. Now, transvestitism doesn't mean that you cross-dress for, just sexual gratification. That's just a loose definition from, the 1970s, back when being transgender was much more controversial than it is now, if you can believe that. watching, the persecution throughout history of people, that identify close to or, in the same boat as I do. I mean, transgender isn't really so much of an umbrella term as some people like to think it is. I mean, when you think about it, the T in LGBTQIA, which I'm still figuring out, all of that. I was still figuring out all of that, and then I thought about it, and I'm like, okay, lesbians, gays, bisexuals, trans, which I just say trans because it's transvestites, transgender, transsexual, all those wonderful T's that we have, questioning, or queer, depending on what circle you're from, intersex, and asexual. So anyone who doesn't fit into your conventional boy meets girl, boy falls in love with girl, and that's the end of story, gender norms. Do I get offended by certain words? I do get offended when people refer to me as it. The only time I think that is acceptable for something to have a neuter pronoun is when you prefer to use like the German derivations, or if you prefer her, HIR, which can be not pronounced here, or Zim or Z, those kind of pronouns, when you refer to yourself as those sort of pronouns. It is actually, gender neuter is something that is uncommon to pretty much every language in the world that is widely spoken except for German and English, where not everything actually has a gender. If you took French or Spanish or Italian, Latin, in high school, you may notice that, every verb, like, la pisara, it's female with the la in front of it, in Spanish. So you figure the chalkboard has, is feminine. Whereas in, like, French, which I think is very funny, le vagin is the vagina, and it's actually male, which it's a female sex organ. So that's, it's weird, just the way languages are. But like I said, transvestite dates back to the Bible times, so you figure tranny was probably used at some point. The word tranny does not necessarily offend me, like Evan and Ted were saying, unless it's used in a derogatory manner. And then it's really not acceptable to use. And I also don't believe in, oh, well, I'm transgender, so I can say tranny. That's like, I'm African American. I mean, I'm really light-skinned, but I'm African American, so should it be okay for me to use the N-word? And the answer is no, it is never okay to use that word. So, like I said, it, he, she, those are rather offensive to me. And I believe that's about it. I'm going to be posting a video on my personal channel coming up here, just giving a little heads up on what's up. But here on OTK, this is going to close out my video for this week, week 10. Next week is week 11, where we'll be introducing 3 new members to our channel, Danny, Xavier, and Terrah. Danny and Xavier both identify as trans men, as far as my knowledge goes, and they're at different stages of coming out, / treatment, HRT, whatever. They're at different stages. Terrah is actually female, and identifies as queer, but I don't want to ruin that for her, so, it's open topic week 11, so we're all going to do our little videos for you guys to watch. So this has been Kage for OTK Fridays, and catch me next week, and maybe I'll ramble about something else. Peace out.